All week, the nation has been remembering the late Senator John McCain. My next guest, he served with McCain in the Senate, and he will be in Washington for the ceremony. Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat from New Jersey, joins us now. And Senator, when you think of John McCain, whether it's a particular moment you had or just his legacy, how will you remember him?
Well, Richard, I'm going to remember him as an American hero who put patriotism over partisanship. And I saw that at work when I worked with him as part of the Gang of Eight when we were dealing with a comprehensive immigration reform. I saw the tough negotiations we had, but at the end of the day came up with legislation that passed the Senate by over 67 votes and unfortunately never saw the light of day in the House. But in that process of weeks of negotiation, I saw his principled position, his tenacity to get something done, and the use of personal political capital and something that wasn't necessarily popular back in Arizona. I saw it when he was a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee when I was its chairman. And when Russia invaded Ukraine, how we came together and worked in a bipartisan fashion to pass the Ukraine Freedom Support Act and sanction Russia, and on national security and foreign policy questions that we worked together. He's an extraordinary man, a lion of the Senate, who we are all going to deeply miss.
They called the Senate one of the most, if not the most exclusive fraternity or sorority in the world, and even though there's political divisions, that group of 100 will come together on things. And the comments and the handling by this president of John McCain, Lindsey Graham said it bothered him greatly, and I'm going to quote him. He says, "It pisses me off to no end, and I let the president know it." Why haven't more people called out the unbelievable pettiness and tone deafness of how this president handled a national hero?
Well, obviously the president is petty and small. To not be able to recognize the contributions of an American hero, someone who was held captive when he was a soldier in Vietnam, someone who served his country in every possible dimension, who loved his country as I've never seen anyone love this country. And, you know, I don't know why others haven't, but I think that to some degree we want to focus on John McCain and his legacy and less on the pettiness and smallness of President Trump.
Fair enough. And to that end, one of the things that John McCain made clear is that there needs to be a rule of law in this country. The president via tweet said he's going to basically say goodbye to Don McGahn as soon as the confirmation proceedings are over for Kavanaugh. And moreover, the writing seems to be on the wall that Sessions isn't going to be long for this administration either. The question is if it's before or after the midterms. I thought that that was a bright line that both parties wouldn't abide by if, in fact, he made a move on Sessions, and you don't have to be Kreskin to see that where that could lead to the Mueller probe. Is that a line still? Or in the last year, have things changed where there aren't 67 senators that necessarily will, you know, go along to get along with this?
Well, look, I hope it is a bright line, especially as it relates to Sessions. You know, the bottom line is I may not agree with the Attorney General on a lot of policy, but he's the Attorney General of the United States. He needs to be independent, especially as it relates to the Mueller probe. He needs to uphold the rule of law. He needs to support the special counsel until the special counsel's job is over and he comes forth with his report. I worry, as we are about to debate the Kavanaugh nomination, that President Trump picked Kavanaugh his get-out-of-jail card because Kavanaugh's writings and views and speeches about almost the supremacy of the president is above all, which is pretty outrageous. To suggest that the president cannot be interviewed, as we saw Richard Nixon or President Clinton be interviewed by a special counsel, to suggest that the president is above the law, to suggest that the president of the United States can determine whether or not a law is constitutional, and if he believes it is unconstitutional, then he just doesn't have to follow it is pretty outrageous. I learned in college and law school that that's a role for the Supreme Court to determine the constitutionality of a law. So, by choosing Judge Kavanaugh, among many other failings I believe Judge Kavanaugh has, including the reproductive rights of women and the rights of organized labor to organize, the standing for big corporations over the little guys, it so worries me about this view he has of the president more of an emperor than a president. So, I am not surprised that the president wants to eliminate anything that is an obstacle towards him personally being held accountable under the law. And so I hope that Republicans will continue to be strong in their position that Jeff Sessions cannot be removed as the Attorney General, and that certainly nothing can happen to the special counsel until he is finished.
Senator, I know norms have gone out the window in the last year and a half, and we're all used to every news cycle seemingly something crazy. But to me, at least, in the last week, there have been a handful of comments where the president clearly seems to be extorting America. And by that I mean he tells a group of evangelicals that if the Democrats win in the midterms, your right to free speech, your right to your faith will be under assault. He says we'll have violence in the streets here, potentially, if the Democrats win. And then he even goes on to say that, hey, if he's impeached, there'll be a market crash and people will be poor. I don't remember any of those things, not one of them being said by any other president in my lifetime. I can't even think of candidates saying that. It's insane. I think we just dial things back because we're used to these things. But if you take that in context, what he's threatening this country, depending on their vote, or God forbid if they move to impeach, it's breathtaking.
Yeah, it's almost a call to arms against the very things that actually he's the one who opposes. He has a view, as we saw in his Muslim ban, he has a view that impinges on the right of religious freedom. He has a view that impinges upon the sacred right of the First Amendment and free speech and being able to come together in common cause to protest, for example, a president or a government. His constant reviling of the press as an enemy of the people, which is what we hear dictators in other parts of the world say about the press, when we recognize, whether we agree or disagree with the press at any given moment, that they are an essential element of our democracy. He puts at risk all of these sacred trusts that we have on all of these critical issues. And for him to make these outrageous statements about Democrats at the end of the day certainly are the biggest advocates of religious freedom. We believe that everybody should be able to choose to worship as they choose at the altar in which they wish to do so. Democrats believe strongly in the First Amendment and in the role of a free press, and of the right of people to organize and protest peacefully when they feel they need to get a redress from their government. It's Democrats who believe in a rising tide of economic opportunity for middle-class and working families so that all can enjoy the benefits, not just the very few. So all of this commentary is so outrageous. And I have to be honest with you, if I was a person, a leader of faith, listening to what the president was saying, I'd be deeply alarmed by it.
Senator Menendez, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richard. Always good to be with you.
All right, when we come back, the church abuse scandal, it is growing. More allegations surfacing now, and we have a guest who knows this subject and, unfortunately, the consequences of this as well as anyone. She has dedicated her life to protecting children. She'll join me next. She has some ideas on what needs to happen here to prevent abuse going forward and how to adequately punish those who are responsible.